Greetings, fellow souls. This is Sri Gary. This is a new seeker meeting. I want to give a shout out to all the new seekers. There's quite a number of them that have come to this remote satsang. Thank you for your interest, your investigation and research. Check it out as much as you want. Come to your own conclusion. I support you 100%. Whether you pursue the teachings further or whether you go to a different doctrine is perfectly fine with me. I am more concerned about you getting to where you're supposed to be, finding that doctrine that best suits you. The title of this new seeker meeting is The True Spiritual Path is Within You. This is a very, very novel idea to the masses. They feel just the opposite and are involved in an eternal search to find the path, but they're always searching outside. To those of you who are spiritual seekers and currently huddled all alone in the middle of a big city, or perhaps sitting in some rural or isolated setting, the feelings of acute loneliness and quiet despair can easily arise, leading to a sense of uncertainty, purposelessness, and a lack of self-direction. Even if the fortunes of life have fallen upon your shoulders, such as a wonderful family, spouse, and children, or enough money to pay the bills, there still exists an inexplicable vacuum, an emptiness that nothing seems to fill. The outer world has given you everything that it can, and yet it's not enough. And almost everyone cannot help but wonder what is missing. The light and sound doctrine specializes in revealing what is missing and then offers unfailing help to attain it. It is both the soul and the sound current which are missing. And since the ultimate purpose of life is to first realize one's own divine self and then merge with this spirit, no one can find absolute fulfillment until these two spiritual conditions are met. This is why many saints have stated that no one is truly happy in this world. It is our own soul who yearns to return to its source, which creates this deep moments of reflection, entertaining the big questions of who am I and why am I here? When the seeker takes on the company of a Satguru and his sound current, these age-old questions, as well as the attitudes of misery, loneliness, and despair, will miraculously disappear. The Master Path, the divine teachings of light and sound, extols the ideal of the sound current. It is this celestial sound current by which every known and unknown saint has attained their own godhood. To me, this is an absolutely incredible statement. This secret, esoteric way of re-entering the exalted levels of consciousness is not known or presently taught in the 21st century institutions, nor in global ashrams, or even the field of academia. It only becomes known from the living master who whispers it into the student's ear, pointedly meaning that the soul who has come under the Satguru's tutelage and protection. This divine sound current throughout time has been described by various names such as the Nam, the Shabda, the Banai, the Word, the Logos, the Tao, the Kelma, and the music of the spheres. This sound current is categorically different than the light of knowledge, which is known as the universal mind power, the very essence of mind, and consists primarily of divine knowledge alone. So light is knowledge. Sound is the true spiritual force. Those luminaries who have championed the sound current, propagating it upon this planet for centuries, have been many, including Pythagoras, Plato, Christ, Rumi, Hafiz, Shamasai Tabriz, Guru Nanak, Kabir, Seth Dale Singh, and Sawan Singh, just to name a few. It becomes curiously insightful to realize that this was the methodology of the saints, the very path each one chose to re-enter their own self and Godhood states. A study of their spiritual writings will unanimously reveal this paramount truth. True spirituality is more about realizing the divine self within you than it is the external worship of God. The devotee must first come to know of one's own divinity before the absolute Lord can be approached. This is referred to as self-realization by all past and present saints. And once attained, the soul's new goal and ideal becomes God realization. Self-realization must always precede God realization according to the principles of truth. It is nearly impossible to correctly worship God when the devotee does not actually know who, what, why, and where God is. Similarly, it becomes equally impossible to realize one's own divine self without any knowledge of who or what it is. This is why masters and saints visit this earthly realm to assist those who are spiritually driven to discover their source. Usually, the seeker's search in the beginning is not solely for God or the divine self, but rather to alleviate one's pain, misery, and sorrow. This is very common. The law of karma is relentless in its application, caring little if humanity suffers or not. Everyone can attest to this due to their own personal experience, and furthermore, release from these karmic edicts does not occur until the individual comes into harmony with divine principle. This is another reason why saints and masters have manifested on this planet, so as to assist all seekers in working out and transcending their individual karma. When your karma is paid, you get to go back to the Lord. It must be stressed that true spirituality has nothing to do with well-known traditional doctrines of religion, philosophy, or metaphysics, nor does it involve the occult sciences, self-improvement programs, or astral and mental projection. All of these commonly known doctrines exclusively orbit around the mind, ego, and personality, and literally have nothing to do with the soul of our being. I know that is a strong statement, but nevertheless it is true. The veils of Maya and illusion have hidden both the soul and God from our sight. Removing these illusory blinders is one of the intended purposes within soul's spiritual journey. It must also be stressed that each doctrine, no matter what it is, serves a divine purpose in the soul's overall evolution. There is currently over 1,000 different paths and doctrines existing upon this globe, far more than that in truth. And for purposes of clear illustration, each one of these paths can be fitted into a grade much like the 12 grades in our education system. Each grade increases in scope and sequence, and so too does each doctrine, until eventually the soul is ready to graduate or ascend into its own divinity. Not all souls within this university of spirit are ready to graduate, just like not all students within the 12 grade system are prepared to receive a high school diploma. To stay with this analogy, when the student finally attains entry into the 12th grade, they are introduced to the Satguru and his sound current, which leads to the attainment of a diploma or both self and God realization. In this light, every grade or spiritual path has its intended purpose. And it's very important to realize this. The master path is not critical of any other doctrine because every doctrine has its purpose. The absolute God of all, call him what you like, offers only two things to all of teeming humanity. The first is his creation. The second, the creator himself. Grades 1 through 11 deal with the Lord's creation. Grade 12 deals exclusively with the creator. Dealing with the creator itself entails both the pursuit of self and God realization. You will not find self and God realization in metaphysics or religions or philosophies, simply because their teachings do not reflect the 12th grade. It's the 12th grade where the whole concept of self and God realization is introduced to the soul, and it appears to be totally antithetical from what our normal world teaches about pursuing spirituality. The pursuit of religious salvation, illumination, enlightenment, and cosmic consciousness all fall within the parameters of the lower creation, ruled by the dual forces of the mind and the universal mind power. The concepts of heaven and hell, morality and immorality, as well as original sin and unresolved karma, fall into this illusory shadow of reality, or in other words, the lower creation. The traditional God of religion, as well as Lord Brahm of the Eastern teachings, is not the absolute God of all, but are only subordinate ruling powers within the Absolute's universal body. The saints and masters know of 8 levels of heaven, whereas Lord Brahm, or the traditional God of Christianity, have their divine position and rule in the 2nd level of heaven. For those of you familiar with Lord Brahm, his divine task is to uncover the divine mind, whereas the Satguru's mission is to reveal the divine soul. This is why the majority of people, 99.9%, confuse Lord Brahm or the traditional God with the Satguru. They feel that increasing the mind's intelligence and knowledge is akin to entering the kingdom of heaven, where a true master says, oh no, that's just revealing the divine mind, which is important, but it falls way below the divine soul. So religions, philosophies, the occult, name anything you want, is more concerned with birthing the divine mind or divine knowledge, whereas the Satguru's mission is strictly to rise above our divine mind and reveal our soul. A human being is comprised of body, emotions, mind, and soul. Similarly, there are spiritual doctrines which specifically address each component of our overall nature. Depending upon an individual's inclinations, they pursue God through either their physical nature, emotional nature, mental nature, or the soul's spiritual nature. Thousands of differing doctrines address the human's physical, emotional, and mental natures, but only one doctrine exists which singularly addresses the soul. This one doctrine is known as Surat Shabda Yoga, or the teachings of light and sound, or the master path. And only the saints and masters know of it. It seems very hard to believe, but it's true nonetheless. The saints unanimously proclaim that salvation is only possible if the soul of our being merges back into its primal spiritual source, known as the Shabda or sound current. The body, emotions, and mind cannot merge into this primary spirit known as Shabda or the sound current, the supreme essence of all essences. But the soul can become one with it because both soul and spirit are of the same essence. This is a critical distinction. Soul, Shabda, and the absolute God are all one, whereas body, emotions, and mind are part and parcel of the lower creation and are indelibly dual in nature. And so all religions of the world, along with all philosophies, occult practices, and yogic endeavors, only address the body, emotions, or mind. You don't have to agree with me, but if you do your research, you will come to the same conclusion. As a result, it leaves the soul of our being completely out of the divine calculus. This is why self-realization is primarily pushed by the saints. Because you have to transcend the mind. You have to get a doctrine that addresses the principles of truth, which are above the mind, in order to discover the soul. Okay, just for clarification, dear ones, and primarily the new seekers, because I know my chelas know this, I mentioned the Light and Sound Doctrine, Surat Shabda Yoga, and the Master Path. Surat Shabda Yoga sometimes can throw a curveball into our mind, and we go, what in the world? I don't even understand anything about that name, and I just want to bring clarification to Surat Shabda Yoga. Surat means the soul. It's another word for the soul. Shabda means the primal spirit. And yoga means practice and union. Therefore, don't be freaked out by the title. But Surat Shabda Yoga is the divine practice of merging the soul into the primal spirit of the absolute Lord of all. That's all it means. That's all the Lord wants us to do, is merge our soul in his divine essence, and then we can go home. The problem is that there's so much garbage between realizing the soul and having it merge into the spirit that a course has to be taken that removes all of this debris standing in the way. Every other known practice is simply the mind attempting to merge back into its own essence, called the universal mind power. And that is wonderful, but we want to merge the soul back into its own primary spirit. So there's a distinct difference. And that's what separates the paths of the creation versus the light and sound doctrine, the master path, or Surat Shabda Yoga. The masters and saints have no concern about the mind. They're most concerned about the soul. 4 major powers exist within the overall creation of God, ranging from the lowest physical plane to the throne of the absolute. The Kundalini, is the first one, which regulates the physical world. The pursuit of prana has its rule in the astral realm. The universal mind power has its sway in the mental regions. And the Shabda or sound current is the essential power of the spiritual realms. Each power, and once again, the Kundalini Yoga, that's the drive behind the sex force. Many millions of people have devoted themselves to the Kundalini. I'm just repeating these four powers for clarification. The Kundalini, the prana, you've heard about the prana, the breathing. It's instrumental in keeping the body alive, but it has its rule in the astral realm, its origin. The universal mind power, that's the power that runs our three minds, has its sway in the mental regions. And the Shabda has its existence in the spiritual realm. So these four powers are the four predominant powers in the entire world. And all religions are based upon them, all occult sciences, all yogic endeavors. Each power, the Kundalini, prana, universal mind power, and the Shabda, unabashedly proclaim it is the highest. Each of these powers has millions of devotees. Each of these powers has its own recommendation for salvation, but only the last listed power of Shabda is free of both Maya and illusion. The former three completely dual in nature and captivated by Maya, illusion, and duality. And that by that I mean good and bad. Basically, a Christian says, hey, if you're a good person and shun all bad, you're going to heaven. Well, that's not true at all. You're so tilted if you're just all good and no bad. If you were all good, you wouldn't be down here. That means you're perfect. Perfect people don't reincarnate into the earth plane. The Shabda power is always represented by a living Satguru, while the other lower three powers are represented by either pseudo-gurus or ascended masters. Salvation of a soul is not possible by embracing either the Kundalini, the prana, or the universal mind power. In fact, our Christian brothers and sisters who claim to follow the Holy Spirit are actually experiencing the rise of their own Kundalini, because the Holy Spirit or sound current exists far above the powers of Kundalini, prana, and the universal mind power. The mastery of the Kundalini can confer extraordinary physical powers. The mastery of prana can confer the astral light of illumination. The mastery of the universal mind power can confer enlightenment and cosmic consciousness. But only the mastery of the sound current can confer both self and God realization. The life of a devotee is predominantly spent in worship and adoration. Although not of any outside person or guru, but the spiritual power within the devotee themselves. Critical distinction, dear ones. I repeat, there are no cultish practices on a true light and sound path, because all faith, trust, and worship are inwardly directed to the divine spirit within each individual. A true spiritual path in no way can be associated with personality worship, whether of an outside master or one's own individual personality, because the devotee is inherently the divine soul, not an ego, mind, or personality. It's very simple to understand. Most seekers abhor personality worship or cultic practices in any doctrine, but they are wholly unaware that they of themselves actually worship their own ego and personality. Master Path stresses the ideal of self and God realization, which consists of transcending the ego, mind, and personality within themselves. Secondly, a true Satguru does not allow for any type of worship of his outer form. The outer master bestows initiation. He pens and explains the divine teachings, and he serves as a guide and way shower, pointing to the way within. But his responsibilities end at this point. The seeker must successfully penetrate the veil of their own third eye in order to begin the spiritual journey. All manner of help is given in order to achieve this initial objective. It should be understood that all light paths, whether the yogas of action, devotion, the vital energies, or the yoga of knowledge, do not transcend the mind, ego, or personality, and thus the spiritual seeker fails to conquer and transcend their own inner personality. If you look at the various teachings in the world, that the ego and personality is not addressed. They take it as the soul itself. And this is the downfall. I don't mean it in a disparaging way, but this is the downfall of the light doctrines. They don't get at the soul. They don't even know about it. They conflate the soul with the mind. According to the saints and masters, this self-created cultic practice, though unknown by the individual, is the most diabolical of all. The reason for this age-old dilemma is that light paths conflate the mind for the soul, the UMP power for the true spirit of God, and mental knowledge for soul's divine awareness and consciousness. Only a true Satguru can straighten out these illusory enigmas, transcending the gross, subtle, and causal minds completely. The seeker must first be sincere and humble in their spiritual search. They must then discover a path which speaks to them, steadily breathing inspiration, love, and joy into their waking consciousness. But most important is finding a true guru, one can rely upon, because the seeker can never go any higher than the guru they embrace. And if the seeker refuses to accept the guru, they never go any higher than what their own mind can conceive. In this scenario, the seeker becomes their own guru. This is often the case with contemporary seekers because they have become wary of anyone claiming godhood and have also witnessed the deceit, falsehood, and misrepresentation of the spiritual ideals, which are seldom upheld by pseudo-gurus. In spite of this conundrum, there are gurus and teachers at every plane of existence. On this gross physical plane, we have ministers, priests, and rabbis. Higher up on the astral plane, there are a host of light gurus specializing in the vital energies of prana and the kundalini. Higher still are the gurus of the mental and causal planes, who specifically deal in the bestowance of divine knowledge and merging the universal mind power which sustains the lower worlds. The highest type of guru is called a Sat Guru. Sat means true, who has his source far above the lower four planes of duality in a realm called the pure positive God realms, or the fifth plane of Satlok. I know some of these words you've never heard of, but if you become a Chela in time, you'll come to understand them all. This fifth plane of Satlok is the original source of the divine soul before its descent into the lower worlds of duality. And once reattained, God realization is bestowed. So the soul comes down from the fifth plane, and after an infinite amount of time, makes its way back to the fifth plane, and that's where God realization is given. Satgurus are commissioned by the Lord of the fifth plane called Satpurush. And these saints are tasked with incarnating on this physical plane to gather those marked souls ready for the spiritual ascent into both self and God realization. These Satgurus have no interest in reforming the world or balancing the scale of karmic justice because these specific duties are left for those incarnations and avatars of a lower order. A true Satguru has been given the divine authority to initiate the pilgrim soul into the sound current, a spiritual gift no other lesser guru is capable of giving. They can initiate you into the light, but the sound current is a horse of a different color. Pseudo-gurus can initiate the seeker with the light, but not the sound of the absolute. All gurus, no matter what their level, have their place in the sun and have something of value to give. This is crucially important to me that you understand this. There's too much criticism of other doctrines, people, and their individual faiths. And they just don't understand the wholeness of the system. Everything has a purpose. We ourselves at one time went through all of these doctrines in our long course of reincarnation. And at that particular time, they helped us immensely. Granted, every teaching comes to an end and you move on to the next one, but we never can be critical of other devotees or other paths. Nevertheless, it becomes very difficult to determine if one's chosen guru is true or not. And this is best determined by two factors. The first is finding reference to the sound current within their respective scriptures. And the second is one's own personal experience with the Sat Guru. Is the spark of love kindled in their presence? Does the seeker, during their studies, experience an undeniable expansion of consciousness? And does the seeker witness the inner form of the master within their dream state, spiritual exercises, or noticing his presence during normal waking hours? A Sat Guru will always let you know he is close by if you remain receptive to him. And so the light and sound doctrine of the true saints and masters is comprised of three essential qualities. Number one is a true Satguru. You must have a true living Satguru. The second, the true sound current. And this is in contradistinction to the mental light. And thirdly, the true teachings. There's so many teachings out there that anyone looking for God can't help but go crazy. You walk into a bookstore, they're lined up like dominoes. Which one's true? Which one can you rely on? Which one should you follow? Well, all you get from that is a question mark. Who knows? How are you supposed to know? These three cardinal principles, a true Satguru, the true sound current, and the true teachings, are all that is ever needed to attain self and God realization within this lifetime. If you read the saints' teachings, you'll not only see that the sound current is referred to darn near in every paragraph, but you experience the clarity and instruction, and everything just makes crystal clear sense. The true teachings can be summed up into 5 essential principles, the first being the fatherhood of God. Next, the brotherhood of all humanity, followed by a love of his creation, along with non-injury to all of its inhabitants, and finally, a love of his divine will for you. The true teachings must be imparted by a true living master, as past recorded scripture has suffered from the hands of overzealous disciples who have failed to interpret the divine works of past saints correctly. For example, the Holy Bible was not penned by Jesus himself, but rather his disciples. Furthermore, the edits, additions, and omissions by religious scholars have drastically altered the saint's original meaning. Only a living master can interpret correctly the past writings of a saint, for in truth, no one else is qualified to do so. When examined closely, the clergy's and pseudo-gurus' description of both religion and yogic endeavor is not only dualistic, but inherently negative in their approach, because they accent the limitations of the mind and not the unlimited nature of the divine soul. It amounts to a retrogressive mental indoctrination consisting of the concepts of sin, karma, immoral and unethical behavior, further accented with either the hope of heaven or the fear of hell. It should be understood clearly that each individual is first and foremost a divine soul, perfectly spotless, infinite, and immortal. There is neither sin nor karma in the divine soul, only truth, existence, consciousness, and bliss. A spiritual path should accent the divine soul of our being and not our own lower polarized nature. The irony of it all is that the mind can never be free of either sin or karma, whereas our own soul is free of both. With the visible crumbling of all our sacred ideals in the world today, including family, church, and state, more and more people are turning inward to find the answers which have eluded even the best of us. The trust in outer authority and those supposedly in the know is fading fast. This conscious inward movement is the correct direction to travel because all truth and reality exist behind the eyes and not in front of them. Everything that the seeker has been pursuing outside exists inside, including God, spirit, soul, and the heavenly states of consciousness, the rapture and bliss of it all. The perfect path the seeker has been endlessly searching for also exists just behind the eyes, along with the spiritual guide and the kingdom of heaven as well. So too does truth, joy, and happiness repose themselves at this third eye plexus, traditionally known as the hidden wicket gate, the 10th door, or the single eye. This is why true spirituality is always an individual approach and never collective, because each devotee ultimately becomes their own religion, their own path, their own truth, and eventually their own master. True spirituality, idealistically, must be all about you. Not an outside temple, a sacred scripture, or another person. This is why self and God realization are so heralded, because they deal with your own inherent divinity and not someone else's. This becomes the shining ideal of the true teachings, that you yourself are the saint to be. I want to thank you all for both your time and attention. Many, many blessings to all of you.